I'm Sister Jennifer Miller. I'm often called Sister Jenny. Most of my early life I was called Trippy, for I'm an identical triplet along with Joy and Jan. We were 7 children born in 6 years to John and Veronica Will Miller in Evansville's West Side. Pat, Katie, and Bob were the big kids, and the triplets and Dan were the little kids. From an early age, my teachers told me they thought I had a vocation, so I thought I had to check it out. Both my sister Joy and I entered the monastery after high school. Later, Joy left the community. My degrees are in English and in religion. My ministries have included elementary and secondary teaching, campus ministry, youth ministry, parish ministry, and being a hospice chaplain. Currently, I work in mission advancement for the monastery. Sounds like I've been around forever, doesn't it?
Yes.
My presentation today is called A Slice of Benedictinism, Values Which Have Kept Me on the Path. My dad was a meat cutter. I often saw him behind the meat counter holding up a slice of bologna or some cheese or ham for inspection. He would ask his customers if it was the proper thickness for them. God has done that repeatedly for me. Through the people in my life, through my reading, my experience, my prayer, God has held up a slice of life and invited me to recommit myself to what I believed was my mission in life. I have sometimes referred to myself as a generic sister and a reluctant nun, not because of a lack of respect for sisters, but because I was certain my vocation was the call to marriage and motherhood. In 8th grade, my friend and I shared our dream of going to Africa one day, helping to save the continent and having a slew of babies. Believing we are made for happiness, I was happy. I loved life. I loved and learned from the interaction with family and friends, from the womb forward as we were a cozy threesome there. Mom was my role model, all that I ever hoped to be. A daily communicant, she didn't impose her choices on her children, but I remember her calling me early on Saturday mornings or in the summer, and she'd ask if I wanted to go to Mass with her. She worked diligently raising her family, often assuming the role of referee and guidance counselor in the games and skirmishes of her children. Always busy, she nonetheless found time for the extras: neighborliness, PTA, altar society, ironing albs, starching altar cloths, praying the rosary, going to benediction, playing clabber. I wanted to be like my mom. I'll mention here that my sisters had all promised to enter the convent if I survived a head injury received in a motor vehicle accident when I was 7 years old. The irony is that I am the one who became intrigued and interested in sisterhood, especially those sisters who taught me at Mater Dei. There was the belly laugh of a Sister Mary Walter, sharing ideas and feelings with Sisters Charlene, Mary Donald, and Mary Angel, making popcorn balls with Sister Dolorita to fund our projects for Little Legion. The joy of Sister Mary Pierre, Helen Maurer, who had me for some kind of class, and the wisdom of Sister Mary Claire, the principal. They challenged and affirmed me. They made religious life an attractive vocation. 2 realities were almost insurmountable obstacles to my religious vocation. The first was that I'm an extreme extrovert. I thought being a sister would make me a sort of woman of La Mancha, not fighting windmills, but forming hearts and minds as a teacher, helping to make our community a famous beacon of light for others. I saw myriad connections, instant friendships with all the sisters and the people with whom I came in contact. The reality conflicted with the dream. College classes, homework, cleaning assignments, and the daily horarium took up all the hours of the day. Not only were we introduced to nightly silence, but we learned that you kept silence during the day hours as well. We weren't allowed to fraternize with college classmates, and the only time we were permitted to talk to sisters who were older was for an hour on Sunday afternoons. Could I build up the body of Christ quietly? It was a question. The second major challenge for me was the great number of sisters leaving religious life in the early 70s, among them my sister and many classmates. If persons who had embodied the best in religious life were choosing to leave, why was I staying? My yes to religious life was not sudden, but gradual, a daily commitment. I was not certain. It was a matter of faith. I want to share the values that really hooked me along the way. The first is community. Brother David Steindl-Rast said, "Spirituality is never a private affair. It is always communal." At home, even though we fought with each other, we were also each other's staunchest defenders. We took delight in bringing joy to one another. We filed each other's sharp edges in day-to-day living. Most of all, we were there for each other when we were really needed. Community in the monastery has been a similar proposition. Having sisters beside me with whom to pray, to eat, to share my thoughts and feelings has been wonderful. Dealing with another sister's needs when they are different from my own is the challenge. My sisters keep me honest. Already in the first month of postulancy, we dealt with a leaky roof. And I mention this because some stayed up all night dealing with it. Some ignored it. Others helped for a while. And it was an experience of the kind of diversity one finds in a family. When I was a teenager, I usually realized the blessing it was to share a room with Joy and Jan. We were there to zip up each other's dresses, to scratch each other's backs, and when we came home from a date, if the others were awake, we could talk about it. If I was worried about something, planning something, they were there to share in it. And so too with my fellow sisters. If I read about something that stretches me or strikes me as false, I can talk with other sisters and get their take on it. Saint Benedict recommended small groupings. We experience that in our subsets called deaneries. There are 12 sisters in our deanery called St. Benedict Hall 1 West. We elect a dean and a treasurer and sign up for a cleaning assignment. We meet weekly to discuss business, check in, share our plans for the week, share about concerns related to health or family, and usually enjoy a dessert, do something lighthearted, and share prayer. This is definitely community. Not always easy, but always an opportunity for growth. What a special blessing it has been to be able to eat together, pray together, and enjoy the company of my sisters through the months of the coronavirus. The sisters were my family, my rock, when my parents and my brother died. They comforted me, they wrote cards, they sang at the services, they were there for me. When I had knee surgery, I received numerous cards, good wishes, and prayers. In sickness and in health, I have had a solid backup. There has been concern and compassion during illness, as well as encouragement and card-playing friends during ordinary times. I often join a small group of sisters who pay me 3 evenings a week. I'm not a gambler. I don't play to win money, but I do like to play well, and I've been known to whine when the wild cards don't come my way. The long line of sisters' hugs following a Jubilee service is a wonderful grace. And when I might put off prayer if I was alone, the bells and the presence of my sisters call me to chapel. Yes, I certainly am invited to find God in community. Then there's prayer. There have been 2 recurring images that depict my relationship with God. In one scene, God companions me on the journey, but I try hard to walk faster or slower because if I'm too close, I'm afraid of what it might cost me. In the other, I'm a cat, not my favorite creature, and God picks me up by the scruff of my neck, looks at me, rolling the eyes with the implied question, "Do you realize who you are and where you're going?" and plops me down, pointing me in the right direction. I share those images because I have not been a person who easily sees the right thing to do and embraces it immediately. Things are not black and white in my world, but nuances of gray. I need direction, counsel, time to make wise decisions, and so thank God I'm guided by Benedict, who says in his rule, "Devote yourself often to prayer." What a wise guideline to a rich life. The priority of prayer makes a lot of sense to me. The framework of the Benedictine life is obviously prayer. Liturgy of the Hours functions like the studs in a house for me. Through morning praise, noon praise, and evening praise, I can identify with the psalmist. Routinely, I plead for help, for protection. Some days life doesn't seem fair. On life's journey, there are days when I experience roadblocks to what I value or what I want, and I complain. Often the beauty and wonder of creation compel me to give praise and thanks. There are times I feel defeated and alone. I need consolation, hope, and peace. The Psalms touch on all these basic human feelings and needs. When I lived in a deanery off the hill, we were faithful to daily prayer, and each sister added her own special intentions during the Liturgy of the Hours. At the monastery, we add those special intentions by means of the prayer board. Too often I neglected Lectio and spiritual reading in the interests of ministry. Reading such books as Radical Gratitude by Mary Jo Letty, Universal Christ by Richard Rohr, and Overdue, a Duodecimo System of Grace by Valerie Schultz have made my life richer through the quarantine. Living at the monastery has given me the incentive to make prayer and spiritual reading priorities. Prayer grounds me. It gives me the support, the courage, and the strength to face the day and its challenges. At home, Mom was always my go-to person when somebody needed prayer. She always had her prayer intention notebook next to the phone by the kitchen table. In the monastery, I'm blessed to have a special friend with whom to share prayer, usually through a critical time. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm blessed to be in a deanery where we make prayer a priority whenever we gather. Sacred music is also special. I'm not blessed with a good singing voice, but a melody stays with me throughout the day. I find myself humming the refrain of a song that was sung during Liturgy of the Hours. Through prayer, there's a greater sense of familiarity with the divine. Prayer offers me a good, solid grounding as I journey into God. Another value that's very special to me is silence. Being extroverted, my experience of silence has been a big surprise. The words of the psalmist, "Be still and know that I am God," Psalm 46, have reverberated with wisdom for me. My youth was almost always noisy. As an adult, I have learned that during times of silence, I can hear what I think. What I have thought, spoken, and written during times of silence is more poetic, more an expression of deeper meaning within me. Silence seems to be the opportunity for God to get my attention, for the spirit within me to assert itself. St. Benedict devotes chapter 6 of the rule to restraint of speech. He writes, "So important is silence that permission to speak should seldom be granted even to mature disciples, no matter how good or holy or constructive their talk, because it is written, 'In a flood of words you will not avoid sin.'" He goes on to say that the disciple is to be silent and listen. Again, being an extrovert, I sometimes don't know what I think until I hear what I say. I can't undo what I say. If it comes out wrong, I'm in trouble. I often think back to a time when I was listening to a musician playing the organ. When she finished, the instruction was to speak only if you could improve on the silence. If only that were always my norm. I also recall a saying, "Who you are speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you say." Formerly an undesirable challenge, silence has become a welcome companion, not an escape, but a friend, not a void, but an invitation to intimacy with God. Another value that I love in Benedictine life is mindfulness. Gradually, slowly, I've come to value mindfulness. When I was young, my life was filled with activity. The more active I was, the more alive I felt. Benedict would have us be mindful of the people and the things in our life. All creation, he seems to say, is precious. My care of the space and the people where I am affects the care of the whole planet. The practice of mindfulness determines how I spend time. It causes me to balance work, prayer, study, service, community, and leisure. Mindfulness is something I aspire to, not something I've achieved. If only statio were contagious. If I stopped one thing and spent some time, space, silence, reflection before moving into another, mindfulness would be second nature, I think. My goal is to slow myself down, to offer a reverential bow to the present moment and be grateful for life. The next value is work. The first words that come to mind when I think Benedictine are ora et labora. As a novice, we amended that motto. We said it was ora et labora et labora et labora. I also think of the passage from Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians, chapter 3, when he says, if a person doesn't work, they don't eat. In chapter 48 of his rule, Benedict says, the monks should have specified periods for manual labor. When they live by the labor of their hands, he says, they are really monks. After many years in the monastery, I was drawn to the words of Joan Chittister, who said in that book you got today, by the way, you new Oblates, that in our work we're co-creators with God. This Benedictine work ethic appealed to me from the beginning. As a young child, I valued work. I loved to be able to do something to help in the household. I was excited when I could finally stand on a stool and help with the dishes. I vied with my sisters to have the opportunity to help. In time, it was established that each of the triplets had a designated area of work. For Joy, it was light cleaning, like dusting and dust mop. For Jan, it was ironing. And for me, it was the big task, like cleaning the oven or the refrigerator or the basement or spring cleaning. Mom taught me that the secret to work was enjoying it. In the monastery, there have been many duties. As a novice, I was assigned to work with Sister Agatha in the laundry. She was a sister who took work very seriously and seldom smiled. My classmate, Sister Jennifer Dipple, and I made a pact that we would encourage her to laugh every day. I think we succeeded. I enjoyed the exercise and the sense of contributing to the whole. I valued the work that my ministry, as well as the work that I was assigned at home. Almost always I cleaned the bathrooms. I enjoyed doing it because they always needed cleaning and because cleaning was a good exercise. I've always enjoyed working with my sisters on projects like the lawn or the garage or cleaning the cars. It simply feels good to contribute to the health and beauty of a space, to, in a sense, recreate it. My work outside the house, which I've always called my ministry, has been a special blessing in my life. Whether it was teaching, campus ministry, youth ministry, parish ministry, hospice chaplaincy, or mission advancement, I felt challenged through it to make the world a better place. I really have enjoyed what I do, the people I meet and came to love. I was often accused of being a workaholic. I forgave myself because God was obviously visible in the people with whom I dealt. They were my teachers, my opportunity to make a difference. My work was meaningful and a force that kept me focused on the path. And that leads me to hospitality. My ministry's almost always been synonymous with hospitality. Benedict, in his rule, chapter 53, says that all guests are to be welcomed as Christ. He says that our care and concern are to be shown in receiving the poor, because in them Christ is received. And that's been my challenge in ministry, to welcome the person in front of me as I would Christ. And I believe that to do this is to practice hospitality. Joan Chittister says of hospitality, it doesn't exist unless we go out of ourselves for someone else at least once a day. There's no hospitality, she says, where I can't think a new thought and see a new perspective and talk to a new person and give them part of myself every day, day after day. It has to be constantly practiced. This is the kind of hospitality I experienced during my time in Haiti. I made 5 trips to Haiti, and always the people there that I met were open to learn from me. They chose to share themselves and their goods with me, no matter how little they had. They treated me with respect, and they taught me a new level of hospitality. Hospitality became second nature to me, especially in hospice ministry. The face of Christ was easily seen in my patients and their families. I'm continually challenged to grow in hospitality, to invite people to experience my life even as I open myself more fully to theirs. And then there's commitment, our vows. My thoughts about what constitutes a vocation have changed over the years. I believe a vocation is a gradual unfolding, an ongoing proposition, and that the bottom line is fidelity to God's daily call. In matrimony, the bride and groom vow, I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. Through our vows, we commit ourselves to live in a Cenobitic community, to be there for each other in good and bad times, in sickness and in health, and to love and honor each other. Like marriage vows, our vows are both a challenge and an opportunity for holiness. Our vows are obedience, which includes poverty and chastity, stability and conversion. I won't talk about the vows except to say that I think commitment is very important in life. I remember a day when I ran into a former University of Evansville student. He'd been active in the Newman Center when I was a campus minister. And he asked me, "Have you remained a nun?" I smiled and said I had. He hugged me and said that meant a lot to him in a world that undervalues fidelity. I do not believe that persons who leave religious life or persons who divorce are less committed than those who remain. I believe that the bottom line is to listen with the ear of our hearts and to follow the voice of God each day. We're not called to judge, but to recognize the fruits of the Spirit in each other, and that leads me to my final point. Oblates, the slice of Benedictinism that keeps me hopeful. In this age, vocations to the monastery are few in number. We do not know whether there'll be a resurgence in vocations or not, but we do know that oblate vocations are on the rise. You too are Benedictines who value silence, prayer, mindfulness, work, hospitality, and commitment. You are individuals who may be single or married, retired, or working full-time outside the home. You are people who are drawn to the guidelines of the rule of St. Benedict, persons who make a huge difference in a culture where greed and power are often the dominant idols. So, my final words are those of gratitude to you, oblates, who fill me with hope for the future. Thank you. Amen.
Jenny, I really appreciate your sharing with us today. And I was thinking as you talked about your triplets being triplets, I said, I don't know your other 2 sisters very well, but I think I would recognize them. So it looked just like you. I never really knew Jenny very well, Sister Jenny, really well, but I always noticed that she was smiling and laughing and having a good time. So she's just been with us, this is second year.
Yes,
Mom's here.
2 years.
And I'm coming to know her better each day. And she has so much to share, as you know. I'm losing my voice. At this time, if any of you would care to ask Sister Jenny some questions or make some comments for her, I would invite you to do so. I told her that you were very talkative and always willing to share a great deal. I didn't mean you, I meant the oblates. The oblates like to share. So don't let me down.
That's all right. No problem. No question.
You got your, are you on mute? You should not be on mute now. You need to push your,
Who is trying to speak?
there's Mary. Can you find your mute button? Did you want to say something, Mary?
Yes, I was going to ask her, you mentioned a few books. I was interested in those, but I didn't have a chance to write them down. But one was by Richard Rohr. I think it was Universal Christ.
That's right.
Do you have any, can you tell me the other ones you mentioned?
Radical Gratitude by Mary Jo Leddy, Leddy. And Overdue, A Dewey Decimal System by Valerie Schultz.
All right, thank you.
We have quite a large library of books up here too, so if you ever want something, you let us know, we can get it to you.
All right.
Anything else? Charlotte? No. Charlotte, did you want to comment?
Yes, I do. I wanted to thank Sister Jenny for a very inspirational talk. It made me think a lot. I enjoyed her words on mindfulness. I think that being aware and cognizant each day for everything that's going around us, it's really important. So I just wanted to thank her for those words of advice.
Thank you. It really, when I thought about mindfulness, I thought about that gesture of namaste, you know, bowing. The spirit within me bows to the divinity within you, and we appreciate all of creation as God's work of art, you know. It's that kind of thing. It's the sacredness of the moment, of time and space and everything.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Any other comments? Got plenty of time.
Sister Jenny, this is Stan Shanner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry I was on mute, and I really appreciate your reflection and how you personalized that and made it your own, and hopefully we can do the same thing, you know, as we grow in Benedictine spirituality and the Benedictine way of life. So I just want to thank you sincerely for your service to others and helping us as we begin our journey. Thank you very much, sister.
Thank you very much. You know, this whole thing about the journey into God, I'd never thought of it in those words until I was with Sister Maria Tasto one day, and I think she had a book in her office, and it was either called that or she mentioned those precise words, the journey into God. Now, I already believe that God is within us, but I also think that as we journey in life, you know, we can be more cognizant of the fact that that's our choice, you know, to journey closer with God, certainly. And that's what you're doing. You know, you're in a countercultural business. You're saying, hey, you know, where the thing is to increase our portfolio, it's to do all these other things. What I'm saying is that I want to grow closer to that spirit deep within me that is terribly important to me. And so you mean a lot to us. Know that. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
More comments?
I'd like to thank Lisa. She listened to me a long time ago when I was in my first draft of this, and made some comments, and I appreciate that, Lisa.
It was wonderful, as I knew it would be, and you really are the Lady of La Mancha, as well as a Benedictine through and through.
You know, I think that that whole thing about beacon of light, you know, that's on our pen, and that's an important symbol. But I think the really wonderful part of it is that oblates are all over, you know, all over the world, all over the United States. And so those sparks of light are so important because so many people experience darkness today. So again, thank you.
I would like to
I really appreciated your reflection as well. And I am usually not rendered speechless. And I'm just in awe of all that you brought up. And thank you.
Thank you.
Sister, my name's Derek, and this is my wife Kathy. We really appreciate what you did. I'm hoping that if this COVID thing ever ends, it'll be nice tomorrow, but that Sister Brenda would drag you to Belcourt. I'm sure our other oblates would love to hear your reflection, your mindfulness, and so on and so forth. It was really awesome. We really appreciate it. Thank you, sisters.
Thank you. You know, I'm really touched. I'm just now learning more about oblates, and the fact that you commit yourself to study, to prayer, to service. Wow. Know that we influence each other, okay? Bless you.
I just wanted to tell you that we have people from all over the United States. And I was going to mention Derek and his wife, Lisa, from, Belcourt, North Dakota. And we had people from California that were supposed to be here today, but they aren't here, but that doesn't make any difference. We have Diane LeDuc from Washington, D.C., and we have people from Alabama,
Sister
Northern
Kathy.
Illinois, I'm sorry.
It's Kathy, not Lisa.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. I called you
Yes,
Lisa.
her sister's Lisa, though.
I'm not Lisa, I'm Kathy, right? I wanted to say, I became the Oblate director maybe 5-6 years ago. I won't tell you my whole story, if you wouldn't want to know it. Sister Jane Will came to me one afternoon and said, Brenda, would you like to be the director of the Oblates? I said, what? I said, I'm not even sure what the Oblates do. And then I laughed. But anyway, it was Sister Barbara Ann and Sister Kathy Bielski. And they taught me all they knew in a couple of days. And Sister Barbara Ann watched over me for about 6 months. But what the message I want to say, and I say this often, I'm not sure they always believe me. I believe that I get as much from this program as you do. You inspire me. You really do. And I have grown to learn a whole lot about you. Generally, I know all of you out there, and it makes me feel good. And I'm so glad so many came today. But it's a good life. We have a lot of people. Generally, our meetings are getting, not the numbers are the most important thing. We aren't counting the people to see who's here, but people right now are just yearning for something better in their lives. And all the things that Sister Jenny said were so very, very appropriate for me and for all of us. So, anybody else?
Thank you.
I haven't heard from everybody, but that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, actually, we have come to the end of our day. I thank you all for coming. I would say it was a learning experience.